The casket was already in the church when they stopped me at the door. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the words my son said. Not the way his wife looked at me like I was something tracked in on a shoe. The casket. Margaret was already inside that church, and I was standing in the parking lot in a black suit she picked out for me 3 Christmases ago, and my own son had his hand flat against my chest. "Dad, you need to leave, now!" I didn't understand him at first. I thought maybe I'd misheard. I'd been driving since 5 that morning, came down from the cabin in Vermont because I couldn't stand to sleep in our bed one more night, and I figured my hearing was just tired the way the rest of me was tired. "Son," I said, "step aside, the service starts in 20 minutes. He didn't move. Behind him, to the open church doors, I could see the flowers I'd ordered. White lilies, because Margaret hated roses at funerals, said they reminded her of hospitals. 42 years of marriage, and I knew which flowers she hated. I'd been the one on the phone with the funeral home for 6 hours straight that week, picking out the wood of her casket, the lining, the hymns, the program. And here was my boy, my only boy, standing in front of me like a bouncer. "You don't get it, do you?" he said. His voice was low, controlled, the way you talk to a dog you were about to put down. "Nobody wants you here. You did this to her." I just stared at him. "The stress," he said. "The fighting. Mom told me everything before she died. About the affair. About the money. You broke her heart, and her heart gave out. So please, for once in your life, walk away. There was no affair. There was no fighting. There were no secrets between Margaret and me except the kind every old couple has, like the fact that I knew she snuck cigarettes on the back porch in the summers, and she knew I read the obituaries before the sports page. 42 years. I would have known. I wanted to tell him that. I wanted to grab the lapels of the suit I'd bought him for his college graduation and shake him until the truth fell out. But I have always been a man who, when he's hit hard enough, goes still. My father was the same way. Some men yell. We freeze. So I just looked past him into the church, and I said, "Let me see her. One more time, I'll go after that." "No. She's my wife. She was my mother." His wife came up behind him then. I'd never liked her. I'd tried. God knows I'd tried for the boy's sake, but she had a way of smiling at you that felt like she was counting your teeth. She put her hand on his arm and said, in that soft little voice she used in public, "Honey, the car. We have to start the procession." He nodded at her, didn't look at me. Just nodded at her like I wasn't standing 2 feet away. "Go home, Dad," he said. "Don't make this harder." And then they walked back into the church and the doors closed and I stood in the parking lot in the suit Margaret picked out and I watched my breath fog in the November air and I thought very clearly, the way you think when something's broken inside you, there is something wrong here that has nothing to do with grief. I want to back up. My name is Lawrence Kessenich. I'm 68 years old. I built a small architecture firm in the Berkshires 40 years ago, designed mostly residential, some libraries and small civic buildings, and we did all right. Not rich, but all right. Margaret was a high school English teacher. We had one son, born late after we'd given up trying. We named him after her father. Margaret died on a Tuesday morning at our home in Stockbridge. Massive stroke, she was 65. She was making coffee and then she wasn't. The coroner said it was instant, no pain. And I have held on to that the way a drowning man holds a board. The funeral was Friday. 3 days later, my son drove down from Boston with his wife to help with the arrangements. That's what he said on the phone. "Dad, I'm coming to help." And I was so destroyed I let him. He took over the calls to the funeral director after the first day. He said he'd handle the announcements. He said I should rest. I remember being grateful. I remember thinking, finally the boy's showing up. Because the truth is, he hadn't shown up much in the last few years. Margaret and I had noticed. We talked about it on the back porch, summer nights, after the cicadas started. The boy had gotten distant after he married her. Christmas calls instead of visits. Forgotten anniversaries. Margaret would call him and get voicemail and call again the next week and get voicemail, and finally she'd say, "Larry, maybe we did something wrong." And I'd say, "We didn't do anything wrong. He's just busy." And she'd nod, and we'd sit there and the cicadas would keep going. Anyway, Friday morning. Parking lot. Closed doors. I sat in my car for almost an hour. I watched people I knew go inside. Margaret's sister flew in from Phoenix, 2 of her oldest teaching colleagues, the man who'd done our taxes for 30 years. None of them looked for me. None of them came out to find me. I don't think they knew I was there. After a while, I started the engine. I didn't go home. I drove 3 miles down the road to a diner Margaret and I used to like, and I sat in a booth, and the waitress, who was maybe 22, looked at my face and didn't ask what I wanted, just brought me coffee and a slice of apple pie and walked away. God bless her. I sat there for a long time. The pie went cold. The coffee went cold. I didn't cry. I was thinking. I was thinking about a phone call. 3 weeks before Margaret died, our lawyer Henry called the house. Henry's been our lawyer since before our boy was born. He's 74, and he still works because he says retirement is a death sentence. He wanted to talk to Margaret about updating the will. Just maintenance, he said. Routine. She told me about it that night. We laughed because she said she didn't trust Henry not to charge us double for routine. She never made it to that appointment. Sitting in that diner, the cold pie in front of me, I started to think about that phone call. And I started to think about my son taking over the funeral arrangements. And I started to think about the fact that right after Margaret died, he'd asked me where I kept her important papers. He'd said it was for the death certificate, and I'd showed him. I'm not a paranoid man. I'm an architect. I deal in load-bearing walls and zoning permits. But you live long enough, and you learn that when something feels off, it's because something is off. There's no such thing as a feeling without a cause. There's only a cause you haven't found yet. I left the diner. I left a $50 bill on the table. I drove to Henry's office. Henry was supposed to be at the funeral. He wasn't. He was in his office because, as it turned out, my son had called him 2 days earlier and told him the service had been postponed to the following week. "Why would he do that, Larry?" Henry said. He was looking at me with those watery old man eyes. "Why would your boy lie to me about your wife's funeral?" "Henry," I said, "I need to see the will." He pulled it out. He had a copy in his desk. We sat there at his cherrywood conference table, the one I'd helped him pick out 20 years ago, and we read it together. Margaret had left everything to me. House, savings, her teacher's pension, her share of the firm. Standard, the way we'd always set it up. If I died first, it all reverted to her. And if we both died, it went to our boy in trust until he turned 40. He was 41. "He gets nothing if you're alive," Henry said quietly. "I know." "Larry, has he been pressing you about the estate?" I thought about it. The boy had been around a lot more than usual since Margaret died. He'd offered to help me sort through her things. He'd asked if I'd seen a doctor about the grief, kept saying I looked confused, kept saying I was repeating myself. "Dad, you already told me that. Dad, are you sleeping? Dad, maybe you should come stay with us in Boston for a while." His wife, the one who counted teeth. She'd brought me forms once. "Just standard stuff, Lawrence, don't worry about it." I hadn't signed anything, but she'd left them on the kitchen table. They were still there. "Henry," I said, "I need to drive home and look at something. Don't go anywhere. Don't take any calls from my son. Don't take any calls from his wife. Don't take any calls from anybody until you hear from me." "Larry, what is happening?" "I think my boy's trying to declare me incompetent." The drive home felt long. I kept seeing Margaret making coffee, her last morning. She'd been telling me about a book she was reading, something about ancient Rome, and she'd been laughing about an emperor who fed his horse at the dinner table, and then she'd gotten quiet, and then she'd been on the floor. I parked in my own driveway and I went into my own house, and I walked to the kitchen table and I picked up the stack of papers that woman had left there. Petition for conservatorship. That's what it said at the top. Petitioner, my son. Responded, me. There were affidavits attached, one from a doctor I'd never heard of, claiming he'd evaluated me at our home and found significant cognitive decline consistent with early onset dementia. Another from my son's wife, swearing she'd witnessed me forgetting my wife's name, leaving the stove on, wandering away from the house at night. None of it was true. None of it. I sat at the kitchen table where Margaret had collapsed 3 days ago, and I read those papers twice through, and then I put them down and I went out on the back porch, and I stood there for a long time. The cicadas were gone, of course. November. But I could hear them anyway. Then I went back inside and I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Henry. I told him to come to the house. Bring everything. Bring witnesses if he had to. The second was to a forensic accountant named Rosalind Yu, who'd done some work for the firm years ago and who I trusted. I asked her to look at every account Margaret and I had, joint or otherwise, going back 6 months. I told her I'd pay double her rate. I told her I needed it by Monday. The third was to a private investigator named Wesley Crane. Big man, ex-steady, son of an old friend. I told him I needed to know everything about my son's finances and his wife's finances, and any business dealings either of them had been involved in for the last 2 years. Then I made coffee. I drank it standing at the counter where Margaret had been standing. I figured she'd want me to. By Sunday night I had pieces. Henry came over Saturday morning with a colleague, a woman named Patricia, who specialized in elder law and conservatorship defense. They went through the papers with me. The doctor on the affidavit had a license that had been suspended in 2 states for falsifying evaluations. Patricia said this was a classic setup. She said she'd seen it a dozen times. Adult child positions parent as incompetent, files emergency conservatorship, gets control of assets within days. By the time the parent fights back, half the money is gone and the parent is in a facility. How fast can they move, I asked. If they had a sympathetic judge, she said, and they were willing to file ex parte? 48 hours, maybe less. It's been 3 days since Margaret died. She looked at me. Then they're already moving, Lawrence. Rosalind called Sunday afternoon. She'd worked through the night. She had a voice that didn't waste time. Lawrence. There's a wire transfer pending against your money market account, $270,000, scheduled to clear tomorrow morning at 9. Recipient is an LLC registered in Delaware 3 weeks ago. The signature on the request is yours. It's not mine. I know it's not yours. The signature is from an old refinance document. Somebody photoshopped it. Can you stop it? I already called the bank. I told them you'd be in tomorrow before they open. I told them not to release a goddamn dime until you walk through the door. I almost laughed. I hadn't laughed since Tuesday morning. It came out of me wrong, more like a cough. Rosalind, thank you. Save it. There's more. Your wife's pension hadn't been transferred to you yet. The paperwork was sitting at the school district's pension office. Somebody called them on Wednesday claiming to be your attorney and asking that the transfer be redirected to a new account. Wednesday. The day after she died, Lawrence. Yes. I didn't say anything for a minute. Rosalind let me have it. I'm going to send you everything, she said. Records, timestamps, IP addresses. Some of it I'm not supposed to have. Don't ask. I won't. Lawrence. I'm sorry about Margaret. She was a good woman. She was. Wesley Crane called me Sunday night. He has a voice that sounds like he eats gravel. Your daughter-in-law's been broke for 2 years. What? She owes about $140,000 on credit cards. 3 of them in collection. She's been borrowing from her sister and lying about it. Your son co-signed on an investment property in 2023 that's underwater by about $400,000. He's about to lose it. My son makes good money. Your son got fired in March. I didn't say anything. Boss told me directly. Said your boy had been padding expense reports. They didn't press charges because he agreed to leave quietly. He's been pretending to go to work for 8 months, driving into Boston, sitting in coffee shops. His wife thinks he still has the job. She might. She might not. Either way, they're drowning. Wes. Yeah. Did Margaret know any of this? He was quiet for a minute. Margaret called me 2 months ago, off the books. She said she was worried about her boy. She said he'd asked her for $60,000 and she'd given it to him without telling you. She wanted me to look into him quietly. Said something felt wrong. I told her what I'm telling you now. She said she needed time to think. 2 months ago. She said she was going to talk to your lawyer. Get the will updated. Said she wanted to put protections in. Trusts. She said, and I'm quoting her, "I love that boy, but I won't let him eat his father alive when I'm gone." I sat down. I sat down on the floor of my own kitchen with my back against the cabinets where Margaret kept the good china, and I held the phone against my ear. Wes. Yeah, Larry. She knew. She knew. She knew. And she didn't tell me. I think she was going to. I think she ran out of time. I sat on that floor for a while after we hung up. I'm not a man who cries easy. I didn't cry for my father at his funeral. I didn't cry the day my son was born, though Margaret says I did, and I'll let her have that one. But I cried right there on the kitchen floor, for my wife who'd been carrying that weight alone for 2 months and who died with it still on her shoulders. Then I got up. I washed my face. I called Henry. I told him to be at the bank with me Monday morning at 8:30 sharp. I told Patricia to start drafting a counter-petition. I told Rosalind to keep digging. I told Wesley to keep watching. Monday morning came. I was at the bank when they opened. Henry was beside me. The branch manager, a woman named Doreen who'd known me since the firm started, walked us back to our office and locked the door. The wire transfer was canceled. The pension redirect was reversed. Doreen flagged my account so that no transaction over $5,000 could be processed without my fingerprint and a video call. She did this in about 20 minutes. She did it because Margaret had once helped her daughter get into a college writing program. She said this without smiling. She said, "I owed your wife." I said, "We all did, Doreen." Then I went home. The boy showed up Monday afternoon. He didn't knock. He came in through the side door, the way he had since he was 8 years old. He had his wife with him. They both looked tired. They both looked, I realized, scared. I'd been watching for that. I hadn't seen it yet. I saw it now. Dad. I was in the living room. I had Henry on speakerphone, but he was muted, just listening. I had a small recorder in my shirt pocket. Patricia had told me to do that. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state, Lawrence. You can record him. Son. Dad, we need to talk about Mom's estate. All right. He sat down. His wife stood. She was wearing the same expression she'd worn on the funeral steps, like she was about to ask Way to sign something. Dad, we're worried about you. Mom's death. The way you've been. The repeating yourself. The forgetting. What have I been forgetting, son? Dad, you, specifically. Tell me one thing I've forgotten. He stalled. His wife jumped in. Lawrence, last week, you called me Margaret 3 times. I never called you anything, Danny. I haven't said your name out loud in 2 years. Try again. Dad, what about the petition for conservatorship that's sitting on my kitchen table? Did I forget to sign that? Or did you forget to wait for me to be too out of it to know what it was? The boy went white. Dad. Or the wire transfer for $270,000 that you tried to pull this morning. Did I forget to authorize that? Or did you forget that your mother's lawyer kept a copy of every signature she ever gave? Dad. Or your job. Did you forget you were fired in March? Because that's a thing you forgot to tell me. That's a thing you forgot to tell your wife too, I think. Look at her face. I'd been wrong. The wife hadn't known. Some of it maybe, but not all of it. She turned to him with her mouth open and he didn't look at her. Dad, you don't understand. We were going to lose the house. Danny's mother. The medical bills. We were drowning, Dad. You were drowning, so you tried to declare your father insane and rob your dead mother. It wasn't like that 3 days, son. She was in the ground for 3 days before you tried to take her pension. 3 days. Dad, please. Do you know what your mother told me? The morning she died. Do you remember what we were talking about? He shook his head. Caligula, the Roman emperor, the one who fed his horse at the table. She was telling me about how Caligula's sister wrote letters to him, and he had her killed anyway, because he couldn't stand the idea that she might love him more than fear him. And your mother said, that's how you know an empire's already dead, when the children stop fearing the parents and start managing them. He started to cry. My boy started to cry. Sitting on the couch he'd watched cartoons on when he was 6, his wife was already heading for the door. Dad, please. We can fix this. I'll pay it back. I swear to God, son. Listen to me. I'm going to say this once, and then I want you to leave my house, and I don't want to see you again until I decide if I want to see you again. Do you understand? He nodded. Your mother carried what she knew about you for 2 months. She didn't tell me because she still believed, after everything, that her boy was going to come around. She died believing in you. That's the gift she gave you. The last one. And you spent 3 days trying to steal her pension. Dad, there will be no conservatorship. There will be no inheritance. Henry is on the phone right now and he is recording everything I am saying. Tomorrow morning, he and I are filing a new will and a new trust. Every penny your mother and I have will go into a charitable foundation in her name, scholarships for English teachers in this state. You will not see $1 of it. Not now, not when I'm dead, not ever. He was making a sound now, not crying, something worse. As for the criminal complaint, I said, I haven't filed yet. I might not. I haven't decided. That's something you and I will figure out, you and me, alone, without your wife and without your lawyers, sometime in the next year. If you ever want to have that conversation, you call me. If you don't, you don't. I stood up. I walked to the door. I held it open. Out. He went. His wife was already in the car. I watched the taillights go down the driveway and turn onto the road and disappear past the line of maples Margaret had planted 30 years ago, the one she'd loved in October. I closed the door. I unmuted Henry on the phone. Henry. I'm here, Larry. Get the trust drafted. Margaret's name on every page. Already started. Henry. Yeah. Thank you. Larry, go to bed. I didn't go to bed. I went out on the back porch. It was cold. I sat in Margaret's chair, the wicker one she'd refused to throw out even though it was falling apart. And I sat there until the stars came out and the temperature dropped and I couldn't feel my hands. I'm going to tell you something I haven't told anyone. 3 weeks before she died, Margaret asked me a question. We were on this porch. She was wrapped in the green blanket her mother had knitted before her mother died. She said, Larry, if something happened to me first, would you be okay? I said yes. I said of course. I said I'd be a wreck for a while, but I'd be okay. She said, no, I mean, with him. Would you be okay with him? I said, what kind of question is that? She didn't answer. She just looked at the trees. After a long time, she said, promise me you'll trust your gut. About him. If something feels wrong, promise me you won't talk yourself out of it. I promised her. I think she knew. I don't think she knew everything. But I think she knew enough to be afraid for me, and she carried it alone for 2 months. And she died with it. And now I'm sitting on her porch in her chair. And I'm an old man. And I'm alone. And I kept the promise. That's what I want to say. That's what this whole thing is about. If you're 60 and you spent your life building something for your children and you start to notice that they're managing you instead of loving you, listen to that. If your gut tells you that the hand on your shoulder is measuring the weight of your wallet, listen. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't make excuses for them. The world is full of old men in nice facilities wondering how they got there, and most of them got there because they couldn't believe their own children would do it. Your children might be wonderful. Most are. Mine wasn't. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because it took me 68 years and a wife in the ground to learn it, and I'd save you the time if I could. Get a trust. Get a lawyer who isn't your kid's friend. Tell somebody you trust where the papers are. Watch the accounts. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, sit with it. Don't let anyone tell you you're confused. You're not confused. You're seeing it clearly maybe for the first time. Margaret's Foundation gave its first scholarship last spring. $12,000 to a young woman in Springfield who's going to be a high school English teacher. I went to the ceremony. I sat in the back. I clapped when she walked across the stage. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't need to. I haven't seen my son in 14 months. He's called twice. I didn't pick up. Maybe I will. Eventually. Maybe I won't. That's between him and me and Margaret, wherever she is, watching. With that look on her face she had when she knew something I didn't. The cicadas will be back in 7 months. I'll be on this porch when they come. I have been thinking, in the months since all this happened, about why Margaret carried what she knew alone for 2 months. She was not a secretive woman. She was the kind who told me when the milk was 3 days past its date and when the neighbor's dog was sick. But she sat on what she knew about our boy, and I think it was because she was still hoping he would come around on his own, hoping she would not have to be the one to break the news to me that the child we raised had grown into something else. That hope cost her. I do not blame her for it, but I have learned something from it, and I want to be honest about what I have learned. Hope is a beautiful thing when it is pointed at the right target. Hope for a child to do better. Hope for a marriage to weather a hard year. Hope for your own body to heal. Those are good, but hope that ignores what is plainly in front of you is not hope. It is fear, wearing better clothes. Margaret was afraid to know what she knew. I have been afraid of the same things, plenty of times in my life, and I have paid for it every time. The cause of what happened to me was not my son's greed alone. It was also 41 years of me and Margaret choosing the comfortable explanation over the uncomfortable truth. He missed Christmas. He's busy. He forgot the anniversary. He's tired. He married a woman who looked at us like we were furniture. He's in love. Each time we softened it, we taught him that softness was what we were for. We taught him that the people who loved him most could be moved. That is the part I want any father or mother my age to hear. Your kindness is not the problem. Your refusal to ever let your kindness have a spine. That is the problem. A man without a spine is not kind. He is just available. I think a lot now about the 3 things I want to leave behind, since money is no longer one of them. I want to leave behind a record of being honest, even when honesty cost me my only child. I want to leave behind the habit of looking at evidence and trusting what I see instead of what I wish I were seeing. And I want to leave behind the proof that an old man sitting on his back porch with his wife 3 days in the ground can stand up and act fast, and act right when he has to. You build character the way you build a house, slowly, with materials that cost something, and the foundation, in the end, is the thing nobody sees until the storm comes. Margaret built mine without me noticing. She made me into the man who could do what I did. The cicadas will be back. So will I.